thought. So, yesterday was amazing. My daughter is 5. And up until yesterday, last night, she always had training wheels on her bike. And yesterday she was riding around and I said, do you want to try without training wheels? And she stopped and looked at me. She said, yeah, but just one. I just want one on. So luckily the training wheels she has are little ones that pop into the lock and then you can flip them up real easy so you can learn to ride a bike. Who would have thought? So I put one up and then I said, well, Scarlett, why don't we just try it with 2 up and see what happens? And so she said, okay, I guess, Dad, you're the expert, right? So we put both training wheels up. And it took her about 3 minutes to figure it out. I was shocked. I'm so proud. So proud. It was amazing. But watching her learn, I remembered a couple things that really apply to us when it comes to learning. So I wanted to share them with you. The first one was when I recommended going, instead of just trying 1 wheel, that we go to 2. When you do make a change, when you change anything, we always have crutches, right? Something that helps us stabilize us, helps us make it through. But if you don't let go of that crutch, it's just gonna change. So with her crutch was 1 training wheel instead of 2. When we let put both of them up, she moved much better. She learned much quicker because now she's thrown in the deep end, right? So now there's no safe place. There's no going back at this point. So when you're learning something new, my first piece of advice today, when you're learning something new, you have to take time and figure out what is your crutch and how can I break it? How can I get rid of it? How can I get that out of the picture so I can focus on what I need to focus on? So that's the first thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to learning something new. So where's my crutch? How is this crutch holding me back? Because if you don't figure that out, it will never let you go. Next thing I learned or remembered, it is way easier when you're riding a bike to go faster than slower. And the same is true in business. The same is true in sales, in professional development. If you're rolling, it's so much easier to keep it going. Yes! Woo! Let's get it, right? But when you're starting out, it's like, oh, do I have to make this call? For example, yesterday, I'm doing my behaviors. I'm not gonna lie, it took me a good 5, maybe 10 minutes to make my first call. But once I made the first call, every single call after that was super easy. I just had to get going. Which takes me to my next lesson, which is starting is way harder than keeping the momentum going. So in your world, what can you do to keep the momentum going? What can you do to keep the momentum moving? Keep it pushing you forward, closer and closer to your goal, so you don't have to start from scratch again. Figure out what can you do to keep that momentum going. And then the last thing I learned watching her is that you must change. You must change your behaviors. You must change your style. You must change what you do when you're going from one thing you know to something you don't. So for Scarlett, with her bike, when she would start, before we took the training wheels off, she would get on, the training wheels would stabilize her, and then she just had to pedal. Now that we took the training wheels off, She has to figure out how to balance a bike that is standing still and start moving. It's a big difference from just getting on and pedaling. She had to change in her mind, in her head, what she does in order to get the result that she's looking for. And so those lessons, I think, apply every day in our lives. Every day, we need to be thinking about what's our crutch, what's holding us back, what are we relying on? Is it your Hopa file? Guilty as charged. I have one. And it's that file of people that you've talked to, and they give you some sort of glimmer of hope that someday they might be clients. Woo! Right? We all have them. So is it your Hopa file? Is that your crutch? What is your crutch, and how can we get rid of it? So first, figure out your crutch, get rid of it. Second, figure out how can I go faster? What can I do to move faster in the direction that I want to go? Is it net? So net time is no extra time. Is it net time studying? So like while you're driving, listening to a podcast, listening to a book, what can you do to go faster, to learn more, to apply more? Figure out what you can do to go faster. Third, starting's way harder than keeping your momentum. What can you do to keep your momentum? What can you do to keep that energy, keep that drive, that flow, that passion for what you do? Figure out what do you need to do to keep the momentum instead of needing to start over and over and over again. And then the last lesson that we all need to keep in mind is if we're going to go from something we're familiar with, that we know, that we do, to something new, we have to change. And change means you might have to unlearn things that you thought you knew. You might have to learn new things that are going to affect your life, how you communicate, how you interact. We must change if we're going to grow. So you've got to let go of where you are and take a leap of faith. Luckily, that's something I get to do and help other people do every day. I'm blessed. So the work I do with Sandler Training, we help people figure out, how do I move faster? How do I keep that momentum? How do I stabilize myself and not get in my own head, especially when it comes to, I was talking about Colin earlier, right? We all get in our heads sometimes. How do I stay out of my own head? How do I take action? How do I move forward consistently, even when it feels like the world is crashing around me? That's what I get to do every day. If you'd like to come to a webinar where we introduce what it is we do, there's a link in this post. Click on it. I'd love to have you as a guest to see how we change lives day after day after day. Go. Love life. You have an amazing one, because chances are you're watching this on a mobile phone, a supercomputer that fits in your pocket, right? You have first world problems. I do too. I am so blessed. So go, love life. How can you apply these rules in your world? How can you make sure you're moving faster, that you're not starting over, that you're constantly changing, and that you're getting rid of all the crutches that are holding you back? If I can help, reach out. I'd love to.